Hello and welcome. This is Crazy's Casual Corner, and I am your host, Crazy, and this is my corner. Today, I will be sharing a precious memory of mine with you all. This memory I will be sharing is actually many memories clumped into one large category that spans for almost my entire lifetime. This category is known as Dragon Ball. Now, this will be a lot longer than most of the videos I have made, but it will be the longest scripted video I have ever put together. So that being said, I suggest you sit in your favorite spot in the corner and get comfortable as I lead you through my memories today. On a day like many others of the life I've lived, except around 19 years ago, I had just gotten home to see my dad watching something on the living room TV. At the time, I didn't recognize what it was, and I didn't think too much of it. Later in the day, though, he ended up approaching me holding the first season orange brick of Dragon Ball Z. He told me that it starts off slow, but it gets a lot better later. And he had me set up in his room watching the first DVD on his TV, laying on his bed. From that moment, I kept watching it, and I was absolutely hooked. By that point, Dragon Ball already had me hook, line, and sinker. Not only that, but it had my whole family there for a while. Me, my dad, and my brother were all hooked into it. The only problem is we really didn't have a lot back then, and we only had the first season for quite a long time before we got any more of the seasons. So we would watch it and then rewatch it over and over and over again for months. Especially me. I watched it more times than anyone and would stay up and fall asleep watching it. Me and my little brother eventually got the second and third seasons for Christmas, and this trend of getting one different season each would continue for many Christmases to come. When we received seasons 2 and 3, there was a time period where we were all involved actively in the series, and we playfully competed with one another to see who was the farthest. I remember in the beginning that my dad asked me one day, "So, how far did you get?" And this was in the morning when he asked me this, and I replied that I had gotten to a certain point, which is what I remember seeing when I woke up on screen in the morning. I was being competitive, you see. And he replied, "No, you didn't. I saw you asleep last night to it." And then I proceeded to stay up all night just watching season 2 into season 3. Now, as we all finished it, and as time passed along with the fact that we only had seasons 1, 2, and 3, me and my brother kept watching and rewatching them. My dad eventually fell off watching them over and over, but he did at least do it more than one time. As we kept watching, my brother eventually stopped rewatching them as much as I did too, and I just kept watching for a long time. Now, the longest segment of time that we only had a few seasons was when we had seasons 1, 2, and 3. My family didn't end up getting another season for a very, very long time. So, out of every part of Dragon Ball Z, I have seen seasons 1, 2, and 3 the most, and it will probably remain that way forever. During the time period before my family received season 4 of the Orange Bricks, I ended up getting just a few other Dragon Ball related gifts, as that is more or less what I talked about for the majority of the time. After my family got season 4 though, it was almost like a catalyst, as we would get Dragon Ball stuff and more seasons for pretty much every major holiday and birthday to follow. This would occur in the form of games, toys, shirts, anything that was Dragon Ball I wanted my hands on. Typically, we would receive 2 seasons every Christmas, maybe a season or movie on birthdays. These days were wonderful for our family. As time passed and we got more and more Dragon Ball Z, as well as merch, movies, games, and toys, it was becoming quite clear who in the family liked it the most, and that person was me. My dad started to fall off in terms of watching. Not to say he wouldn't, but it was more of he would just watch the season one time. maybe 2 times, and move on. He did, on the other hand, keep coming back to watching season 3, over and over again. It was his favorite out of all of it. Me and my brother continued to watch and rewatch everything we got, every season and movie. We eventually ended up having all the orange bricks for Dragon Ball Z, the green bricks for Dragon Ball GT, just a few of the Dragon Ball Z movies, and assorted games, toys, and clothes. We had that small collection for the longest time, and it was never expanded upon until much later in my life, and I was content with that at the time. You see, when I was younger, I pretty much had no access to the internet, so I had no idea there was more out there. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't even know what an anime was, and I thought Dragon Ball, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Were just really cool cartoons because of this. During this time period of that collection of ours, my dad had discovered Dragon Ball Z Abridged by Team 4-Star on YouTube. Now, when I first came into contact with it, I thought it was the funniest thing ever. Much like when I first discovered Wipeout on TV one day after school and proceeded to non-stop laugh as loud as I could for the whole episode. Now, as I thought it was funny, I never considered it better than the actual show, but my dad did not share the same opinion. He said on multiple occasions that he enjoyed Abridged more for multiple reasons. He also said he only really liked Dragon Ball Z for the fights and didn't care much for everything else, but I loved all of it. It was at this point that my young brain started to feel lonely in a way. My brother wasn't watching as much as he had in the past at this point either, but that makes sense. There are other things to watch and play for enjoyment. I felt like I was on this island of Dragon Ball alone sometimes, but I grew out of that perspective later down the line. Now, in this time frame of a handful of years receiving seasons, I got many other games, clothes, and toys throughout the years. One main staple within everything was during the period where all I had was a PlayStation 2 and a DS, and I got Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans. This game single-handedly made me fall in love with 2D sprite work and turn-based gameplay. I was floored at how good this game was. I took this game with me everywhere, and without being able to use the internet, scoured the entire game's maps and found every single secret the game had. Needless to say, I loved it. At the time, I didn't know it, but this was just the tip of the iceberg, as I would soon get an avalanche of different Dragon Ball titles for different consoles, and many of them were bigger and better than Dragon Ball Z Attack of the Saiyans. Now, a lot of the times and places when I received these games and some of the seasons are a little blurry in my memory, as it tends to blur together in places. So, that being said, for this segment I will discuss some key games, items, or thoughts. Continuing on with the DS theme, on one of my birthdays my dad gave me Dragon Ball Fusions for 3DS a few weeks early. I remember him coming into my room and I was wearing a Dragon Ball Z shirt, and he asked if I wanted a gift early, and I said yes, of course, and he handed me my gift. I unwrapped it and I was overwhelmed with sheer and utter joy and excitement, because in this game I could fuse pretty much anyone I wanted to together and make fighters that shouldn't exist. A whole game of what ifs, and to this day it's a fantastic game. But my favorite part of the memory is the look my dad gave me before he asked if I wanted a gift early. I could tell he was excited to give it to me and watch me open it. Now, I can't go through different staple games I had without mentioning the Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi trilogy. When we had Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 1 and nothing else, my dad played this one for the most part, as I was pretty young and not very good at games at that point. But we would bring the PlayStation everywhere we went so we could play it. In the game, you could equip Z items to any characters to make them better and stronger, and my dad's favorite character in Dragon Ball Z was Goku. So naturally, in the game, he made him the strongest character we had in the game, and was very proud of his Goku. I still have this Goku and the respective save file, and let me tell ya, he had every right to be proud of it. He made Goku a monster in that game. I could never beat him in this game at all during that time. Then came Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 2. My dad and I played this one together pretty much equally. He also continued the trend and made his high-level Goku, which again, he should be proud of. This one was stronger than the last one. He spent more time on it, and in this game, there was a leveling system, which the last game did not have, and he made a complete monster. We played every mode, every stage, and every character, and we would commonly face each other, but I still couldn't beat him. He had these games down pat, and would commonly practice on the highest difficulty bots. Now, the transition from 2 to 3 has a story attached to it. My brother and I were playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 2, and at the time, the PlayStation 2 was in his room. Now, he was losing a match as we were playing against one another, and he got angry and ended up pulling the controller. Now, the controllers were wired, and the PS2 was on the second shelf of the entertainment center under the TV. This caused the PS2 to go with the pull and land on the ground. This severely messed up the disc with huge scratches and also broke one of the composite cable pins in the TV, so we had to move the PS2 into my dad's room. The disc, on the other hand, still kinda worked. A lot of the times, the loading screens would be infinite, transformations were sometimes infinite, sometimes it would lose all audio, and it had some other issues, but I worked around them and still played it until I got my hands on the best game in the trilogy. Now comes the big one. At one of my birthday parties, I was given Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. This game is still one of my favorite games of all time. Me and my dad would play it religiously, but I noticed something a little off when we were playing it. I was playing this one a lot more, but my dad started to slow down on the Dragon Ball stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, he still beat the stuffing out of me in the game. I still couldn't come anywhere near his skill level, but I was determined to grow, and grow I did. As time continued and I played the game more and more, I got to the point where I was pretty confident in my capabilities, and I wanted to have a serious match with my dad, to which he agreed. So we faced off. I was Goku Super Saiyan 4, and he was Goku Super Saiyan 3, his favorite form. We fought on Kami's Lookout, a suitable location for the day I was finally going to surpass my dad, I thought to myself. The match began, and it dragged on as combos were thrown, blasts were exchanged, and then we were both low health. My dad was up in the air, and I was on the lookout. He began charging up a Kamehameha, so I used instant transmission to get behind him. I thought I timed it to be right as he released, but I was wrong. I did it just a little too early. I popped up behind him, and because he was about to release, it changed his direction, and he shot me close range. I couldn't escape because I was stuck in the animation. The match was over, and I was the loser. I came close, but not close enough. From that day forward, a fire burned within me. I was going to win the next time we faced each other, and I needed to be 100% sure of that fact. So I began to train every single day I could, so I could get better. This training arc lasted years, as I needed to be sure I could win, but also I had another motive. My dad had a job that was hard on his body, and he was sore, tired, and got hurt all the time. So in my naivety as a child, I wanted to win a world tournament of Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, and win tons of money so my dad wouldn't have to work anymore. Now keep in mind that I did not have access to the internet, so I actually had no idea that tournaments like that just straight up did not exist for this game in any capacity. With all that in mind, I carried on to be the best in the whole world. It was almost halfway through this training arc of mine that a small thing happened. I was just playing a match against a CPU, and all I was doing in the match was examining the CPU's moves on that specific character. I was Super Saiyan 2 Goku, and the CPU was Spopovich. Well, my dad happened to come in the room, and at this point, he had stopped playing the game. The CPU had gotten me down to one sliver of health. At that point, any attack could have ended me. My dad noticed and said, "What are you doing? Look at your health." I replied, "Oh," and went straight to work. The CPU had full health at the time too. Anyway, I beat him without him laying a hand on me, and in that instance, my dad said, "Holy shit, boy, I'm never gonna play this game with you again." At the time, I didn't take this seriously. To me, it just sounded like he was proud of me, and that made the fire in me burn ever hotter. Now, fast forward a few more years, near the end of my training arc. Nobody in my family wanted to play this game with me, because I just beat them. I wanted to challenge everyone in hopes of getting better, so that is what I did. Cousins, uncles, anyone who would be willing to play with me even for one match. But I didn't let the fact that they didn't want to play with me mess with my head. I had a goal and I intended to make it, so I pressed on. I even got to the point where I could play the game completely blindfolded against any character in any map and situation. I even used the same controller the whole time I played, just so I stayed consistent. I still have the controller to this day. It's a little beat up, but it still works. This is where my next story comes into play. I moved a TV and my PS2 into the living room so I could hang out with my dad watching movies and I could play. But on this particular day, I decided to practice blindfolded, so I started a match. I was playing as Super Saiyan Kid Trunks against Super Saiyan Kid Goten. I started the match and went to work. I won the match, and as I took off my blindfold, which at the time was just a cloth headband with the symbol from the original Karate Kid movie, my dad was starstruck. He had his eyes wide open, glued to my screen, and his jaw was practically on the floor. Something to keep in mind as well, while I was in my training arc, my dad pretty much did his own thing and never really saw what I did in my training. As he stared at the screen, he said, "I can't believe you just did that." And the next part he said with a seriousness in his tone that actually reached my brain this time, as he reinforced this. "I am never ever playing this game with you ever again. I'd prefer not to get my butt kicked 3 ways from Sunday." It is at this point where my flame wavered for a moment. This was also during the time period where he slowed way down on anything Dragon Ball Z, and I, in that moment, felt very alone. It really stung. I can't really convey the feelings that I felt then, and to top it all off, I never did get that one final match I wanted to have with him. Now we find ourselves maybe a little over a year since that occurrence. At this point, I had an Xbox 360 and had gotten my hands on a few Dragon Ball games for it, but nothing was really catching that same flame I had originally. And the watching of Dragon Ball Z in the house was pretty much just me and my brother rewatching it occasionally, with my dad rewatching Dragon Ball Z Abridged as many times as he physically could. He loved that version of Dragon Ball Z. In this time period, I did end up getting my hands on a game called Dragon Ball Xenoverse for the Xbox 360. For me, it was almost exactly what I wanted in a Dragon Ball game. You made your own custom character. It actually felt like you were in the Dragon Ball universe, letting you fly around and use all the moves from different characters. From my perspective at the time, the game was great, although I did have some problems with it. As it did have huge potential, it just wasn't quite there yet, with how the characters felt and how it played. But nonetheless, I continued on and enjoyed the game. It is worth noting that pretty much every Dragon Ball game I got my hands on during this period, I would play until I was done with it. Some of them I just played the story, but the better ones I would play and play and play. Most Dragon Ball games, especially at the time, just followed the mainline story, and didn't diverge from that path for the most part. Some games added little what-if missions, but most really didn't. So when I was playing Dragon Ball Xenoverse, I was a little floored because it was a well-made game in the Dragon Ball universe that was one giant what-if story. And I was loving every minute of it, despite the problems the game had. Despite all of that, the old flame of mine wasn't really roused at this point, and I continued to float and play a variety of different Dragon Ball games, until one fateful birthday. I was celebrating with my mom's side of the family, and I had asked for one thing in particular that I had seen a trailer for: Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. I was opening my presents, and when I got to the end of them, I was a little disappointed because I didn't get the game. I mean, at this point, I had traded in lots of things and saved every penny for over a year to buy an Xbox One. And then a game I was extremely hyped for came out for the console, and that was Xenoverse 2. So of course, I was a little disappointed, but I carried on. I mean, we were having a party at the lake, so there wasn't much to be sad about. But then my uncle showed up late to the party, and he just walked right up to me and said happy birthday, and handed me an unwrapped copy of Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. It was a new copy, with the cellophane still on it, and oh my gosh, I was so ecstatic, I could not wait to get home. I kept looking at the case front and back, reading it over and over and over again. Every little detail needed to be unearthed, and I intended to dig it up. Eventually, after what felt like forever, I got back home and I went straight to play Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. And let me tell you, this specific moment changed the course of my life forever. I played this game for the next 10 years, and I still, to this day, play it. As when I first opened up the game and started playing, I was absolutely floored. It improved upon literally everything Xenoverse 1 set out to do. I remember that I had non-stop waves of goosebumps while I was playing, and I couldn't stop hand flapping. I legitimately felt like I was in the Dragon Ball universe, and I was home. It was from this game specifically that allowed me to meet my brother Dark. First, I met Knight through it by facing him online, and he had his friend Dark, which I met maybe a few months after. This brotherhood I have with Dark is lifelong, and I owe it all to Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. This game for me sparked the flame I had in my chest again, and it was burning red hot once more, and I was ready for it. So I played and trained on this game just like I did for Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, and I ended up, of course, getting very good at the game. Like all Dragon Ball related things though in my life, as time went on, I was the only one playing it in the friend group for a really long time. But at this point, I had already grown past that feeling of isolation and was contently enjoying the game myself. When we go forward many more years, I got Dark and my other brother from another mother, Ghosty, to play it. I became their master and they were my pupils. We had an absolute blast training and playing for a long time, and to this day, when I look back on Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2, I get nostalgic. I mean, hell, I even got my dad to play a match or two with me, but he didn't enjoy it that much. He was into other types of games at the time, but I still had fun. It was also during this period that Dragon Ball Super and the two movies before it, Resurrection F and Battle of the Gods, came out, so I was stoked for that too, of course. But I didn't end up adding those to my collection till much later. Although, I did have access to the internet by now, and I finally realized there was more Dragon Ball content before Dragon Ball Z. So I told my dad, and for my birthday, he ended up getting me the Blue Brick DVD collection of Dragon Ball. My collection was growing, and I really enjoyed that. And during all of this, of course, I was playing and training inside of Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. I mean, it improved the fighting, movement, missions, frame rate, characters. It even was really distinct with the battle damage of the outfits of characters. I've always loved battle damage in Dragon Ball games, especially in Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. Anyway, to keep this video from lasting absolutely forever, I'm going to stop talking about Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 and move on, because quite frankly, I could go on and on and on forever about this game. It was during this Xbox One period that I got two different games. One of them I got when I was in high school, and the other I got much later when I had already graduated. The one that I got during high school was Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Now, to me, this game looked fantastic. It was advertised as a real way to be in the Dragon Ball universe, and even Akira Toriyama, rest in peace, worked on this game. He even included canon things for the universe that you could only find in this game. I was so hyped that the moment I was able to pre-order it, I did. And then I proceeded to have to wait more than 3 months. I even set up a timer on a website that could count down from that much time, and I would be sitting in class and watch the seconds go by one. Oh my god, it was dreadful. But I eventually got the game and was able to play it. Not to anybody's surprise, but I ended up falling deeply in love with this particular game and proceeded to play it until everything was done and my characters were all the strongest they could be with complete skill trees, including the DLC characters later down the line. This game is a work of art, and it definitely hit me right in my little Dragon Ball loving heart. It was also this time period where I got my dad hopelessly addicted to Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle. A good game on the phone that still, to this day, never stops growing. He played that game way more than I did. I preferred playing my Dragon Ball console games anyway, but there was something brewing over the horizon. If we go past a handful of years, my collection was looking pretty solid. I had every movie, season, and manga for the entirety of the series, and to this day I am still growing that collection with the new stuff that comes out. The only thing I will never get though is Dragon Ball Z Kai. I personally don't like it. Then I saw it. I was at my dad's at this point, and a teaser trailer popped up on my phone for a game that was set to come out later. And oh my god, I was hooked immediately, because it looked exactly like a way better version of Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, and was set up to be a successor to it. I was correct in my thinking, and I was so hyped for it. Even my naive hopes of winning lots of money at a tournament started to fill my head again. I even got my dad excited for it. And so, time passed. I showed my dad every trailer to ever come out for it, and I personally watched any video I could about the game. As soon as I could pre-order it, I absolutely did, and even my dad and brother pre-ordered it. I was so excited and filled with bursting amounts of anticipation. When the game finally came out, I was swept away in emotion, and I played it to hell and back, and completed everything the game had to offer. During this time, my brother played it, and so did my dad a little. I even started to think about having a grand rematch with my dad, and get that final match that we never got to have, but at this point, he couldn't. I mean, he even said he was willing and waiting to play together in the game, but I couldn't bring myself to take him on. You see, at this point, my dad had been fighting cancer for a few years, and his body was falling apart. He only ever ended up playing Sparking Zero for a little over an hour in total. It hurt his hands too much to be able to play, so instead of having that final rematch, I couldn't bring myself to face him, and I wanted the last match we ever had to be when he won in an all-out head-to-head. Sparking Zero never ended up hitting me as hard as Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3 did. Maybe it was the circumstances, maybe it was the game, but it just never did. Even Xenoverse 2 hit harder than Sparking Zero did, and I full-on expected Sparking Zero to blow every Dragon Ball game I have ever played out of the water. My dad ended up passing away just a few months after that, and while my mom didn't have much connection to Dragon Ball, she passed away just a week after my dad did. This, of course, was an absolutely devastating blow. And you may be wondering, where does Dragon Ball come into play in this part of the story? Well, to be frank, it was one of the main things I turned to for comfort and support. It made me feel close to my dad when he wasn't there, and reminded me of all the good times we had. It also helps that his favorite character was Goku, and my favorite character has always been Gohan. I began to buy more merch and items to surround myself with to comfort me. To this day, I still seek out Dragon Ball for comfort. I even sleep while watching it because it helps me go to sleep and helps me with my nightmares. While my outlook used to be very bleak, I am much better than I used to be. I look forward to being able to introduce my son to Dragon Ball, while at the same time I am getting to show both my wife and my brother Ghosty Dragon Ball. Even though my dad is gone, I can still feel him as I watch or see anything about Dragon Ball. It reminds me of all the times I spent with him playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai, or watching it together, or cheering for Goku, or yelling out moves at the top of our lungs while we were spending time together. It reminds me of when we were on the porch together talking after school, talking about Dragon Ball, talking about what ifs, talking about power scaling. We spent a lot of time together with Dragon Ball. It was all around us, and because of it, I spent lots and lots of time with him, and it just connects me to him, connects me to the rest of my family. And on top of that, more Dragon Ball is coming out, so I'm extremely hopeful for the future moving forward. As you can now see, my memories with Dragon Ball connect me to my family, and more so to my dad, which makes it just that much more important to me, and why I have brought Dragon Ball throughout my whole life. I had no idea how much this show would mean to me when my dad first approached me with it, and I wouldn't change a single thing. Dragon Ball has brought me so many great memories, and with it, I bonded with my family. Dragon Ball provided me a closeness for me and my family that can never be diminished or smeared in any way, and still to this day it is allowing me to do the same with the family I am building, and will continue to do so in the years to come. As you can see, I have many memories under this specific category, and I intend to make more. But it looks like our time together is now coming to an end. But the corner is always available to you, so even if I myself am not here, at the very least you will have Past Crazy to keep you company. So feel free to come and have a look at the memories we have made together, and just remember, I appreciate all of you, and I am proud of each of you. I hope you're all having a good time whenever you're watching, and thank you for stopping by. Maybe if you haven't seen it, you'll consider watching Dragon Ball. Well, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.